What happens when royal privilege meets real-world consequences on live television? In just 29 seconds, one shocking outburst would destroy a carefully crafted public image and leave millions of viewers stunned. This is the story of how entitlement collided with reality on one of Britain's most beloved talk shows. The Graham Norton Show had seen countless celebrities grace its famous red chair over the years. From Hollywood, A-listers to music legends, Norton had mastered the art of making his guests feel comfortable while keeping the conversation flowing. His quick wit and genuine warmth had earned him a reputation as one of television's most trusted hosts. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold on this particular evening. As the studio lights dimmed and the familiar theme music began to play, the audience settled into their seats with anticipation. The guest lineup looked promising. Sitting across from Norton in the plush red seating area was Meghan Markle, former royal and media personality. Alongside a popular British comedian and a well-known author, the atmosphere seemed relaxed, almost festive, as Norton delivered his opening monologue with his trademark Irish charm. "Welcome back to the show," Norton said with a smile, turning to his guests. "Now, Meghan, you've had quite a journey over the past few years. From actress to royal to, well, whatever comes next. How are you finding life these days?" It was a simple question, the kind of softball opening that most talk show hosts use to ease their guests into the conversation. Norton's tone was friendly, almost protective. He had no intention of ambushing anyone or creating drama. This was meant to be entertainment, not confrontation. Meghan shifted slightly in her chair, her posture immediately becoming more rigid. "Well, Graham, I think that question itself shows exactly what I'm talking about. This constant need to define me, to put me in a box. I'm not just whatever comes next. I'm a humanitarian, a mother, a voice for change." The audience remained politely attentive, but Norton could sense a slight shift in energy. He had interviewed thousands of celebrities over the years, and he knew when someone was bringing more intensity than the moment required. Still, he pressed on with his professional warmth. "Of course, absolutely," Norton replied smoothly. "I think what people admire about you is how you've used your platform to speak about important issues: mental health, women's rights, social justice. These are topics that really matter." "Exactly," Meghan said, her voice rising slightly. "And yet the media continues to focus on trivial things. What I'm wearing, where I'm living, who I'm friends with. It's exhausting being constantly scrutinized when I'm trying to make a real difference in the world." Norton nodded sympathetically. "The media attention must be incredibly difficult to navigate. I can't imagine what that's like." "You can't," Meghan replied sharply. "And that's the problem. People like you, sitting in your comfortable positions, making jokes, and keeping things light while the world is falling apart. Do you realize the privilege you have? Do you understand that your platform could be used for so much more than just entertainment?" The studio fell silent. Even the comedian sitting next to Meghan looked uncomfortable. Norton's smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered his composure. Years of live television had taught him how to handle unexpected moments, but this felt different. This wasn't a planned bit or a celebrity having a bad day. This was something else entirely. "I think entertainment has its place," Norton said carefully. "People work hard, they deal with difficult things in their lives, and sometimes they just want to sit down and have a laugh. There's nothing wrong with that." "There's everything wrong with that," Meghan shot back. "While you're making people laugh, children are starving. While you're interviewing celebrities about their latest movies, women are being oppressed around the world. Your show reaches millions of people, and this is what you choose to do with that power?" Norton's professional mask was beginning to slip. The audience could feel the tension building, and cameras continued to roll as what should have been a pleasant chat was transforming into something much more uncomfortable. The other guests sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or simply wait for the moment to pass. "Meghan," Norton said, his voice remaining calm but firm, "I think you might be misunderstanding what we do here. This show has raised millions for charity over the years. We've given platforms to important causes. We've highlighted serious issues when appropriate, but we're also here to entertain people, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that." "Nothing wrong with it?" Meghan's voice was getting louder now, her composure completely abandoning her. "Nothing wrong with distracting people from the real issues? Nothing wrong with keeping them compliant and comfortable while injustice happens all around them?" The audience was now visibly uncomfortable. Some were shifting in their seats, others were whispering to their companions. This wasn't the light-hearted celebrity chat they had come to see. Norton knew he had to regain control of the situation, but he also knew that millions of people were watching. Whatever he said next would be scrutinized and analyzed for days to come. "I think we might be taking this in a direction that wasn't intended," Norton said diplomatically. Why don't we talk about some of the positive work you've been doing? I know you've been involved with several charitable organizations, but Meghan wasn't interested in changing direction. If anything, Norton's attempt to redirect seemed to fuel her anger even more. "There you go again," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Trying to control the narrative, trying to keep things safe and sanitized. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You people in media, you think you can just steer the conversation wherever you want it to go. Well, I'm not going to let you do that to me anymore." Norton's patience was wearing thin, but he maintained his professional demeanor. "I'm not trying to control anything. I'm just trying to have a conversation that our audience can enjoy." "Enjoy?" Meghan laughed bitterly. "While the world burns, you want people to enjoy themselves? That's the most privileged thing I've ever heard." The breaking point was approaching fast, and everyone in the studio could feel it. Norton took a deep breath, his years of experience telling him that this situation was spiraling beyond repair, but he had faced difficult guests before, and he knew that sometimes the best approach was to address the elephant in the room directly. "Meghan, I understand you're passionate about these issues, and I respect that, but I think you might be mischaracterizing what we do here. We've had world leaders on this show discussing climate change. We've had activists talking about human rights. We've raised awareness for countless causes. Entertainment and education aren't mutually exclusive." Meghan's eyes flashed with anger. "Don't lecture me about education, Graham. I've lived experiences that you could never understand. I've faced discrimination. I've been silenced. I've been pushed out of institutions because I dared to speak truth to power. And now you're sitting there trying to minimize my concerns, like I'm some difficult celebrity having a tantrum." "I'm not minimizing anything," Norton replied, his voice remaining steady despite the provocation. "I'm simply saying that there are many ways to make a difference in the world, and entertainment is one of them. It brings people together. It creates shared experiences. It helps people cope with difficult times." "Cope?" Meghan's voice rose to a near shout. "You want people to cope instead of fighting for change? You want them to sit back and be entertained instead of demanding justice? That's the most irresponsible thing I've ever heard from someone in your position." The comedian sitting nearby finally found his voice. "Maybe we could all just take a step back here," he said nervously. "I think there might be some misunderstanding." Meghan whirled around to face him. "And who are you to interrupt? Another privileged man telling a woman of color to calm down? Another person who benefits from the system trying to shut me up?" The comedian's face went pale. He held up his hands defensively. "I wasn't trying to shut you up. I was just suggesting that maybe we could find some common ground." "Common ground?" Meghan laughed harshly. "There is no common ground between people who want to maintain the status quo and people who want to tear down systems of oppression. You're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. And right now, everyone on this stage except me is part of the problem." Norton had heard enough. His Irish temper, usually well-controlled, was beginning to show through his professional facade. "Now hold on just a minute," he said, his voice carrying a new edge. "You can criticize me all you want, but you don't get to attack my other guests. They didn't sign up for this." "Attack?" Meghan's voice reached a fever pitch. "You think calling out privilege is an attack? You think demanding accountability is aggression? This is exactly what I mean about how the system protects itself. The moment someone speaks truth, they're labeled as difficult or aggressive." "Speaking truth?" Norton's composure finally cracked slightly. "You're not speaking truth. You're having a go at people who invited you here as a guest. You're being incredibly rude to people who have done nothing wrong except try to have a pleasant conversation with you." The audience gasped. Norton rarely lost his cool on camera, and seeing him push back against a guest was shocking. But Meghan seemed energized by his reaction rather than chastened by it. "There it is," she exclaimed triumphantly. "The mask comes off. Now we see the real Graham Norton, not the charming host, not the beloved entertainer, but just another man who can't handle being challenged by a strong woman." "This has nothing to do with you being a woman," Norton replied firmly. "This has to do with you being incredibly disrespectful to everyone in this room. I've had plenty of strong women on this show who managed to make their points without insulting everyone around them." "Oh, really?" Meghan's voice dripped with sarcasm. "And were any of those women former royals who gave up everything to speak their truth? Were any of them women of color who faced relentless media persecution? Were any of them mothers who had to protect their children from institutional racism?" Norton paused, recognizing the trap. Whatever he said next would be analyzed and dissected. If he agreed with her characterization, he would be validating her behavior. If he disagreed, he would be accused of dismissing her experiences. He chose his words carefully. "I think your experiences are valid and important," he said slowly, "but that doesn't give you the right to treat other people poorly. You can stand up for what you believe in without tearing other people down. Treating people poorly? Meghan stood up from her chair, her voice reaching levels that made the microphone crackle. I'm telling the truth, and you call that treating people poorly? I'm demanding better from people with platforms and power, and you call that disrespectful? This is exactly the kind of gaslighting that drove me out of the royal family in the first place. The studio was dead silent, except for her voice. Even the production crew behind the cameras had stopped moving. Norton remained seated, looking up at her with a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. Meghan, please sit down, he said quietly. Let's try to finish this conversation like adults. Adults? She laughed bitterly. Adults would have used their platform responsibly in the first place. Adults would have educated their audience instead of just entertaining them. Adults would have elevated the conversation instead of keeping it superficial. And adults would have shown basic respect for their host and fellow guests, Norton replied, his patience finally exhausted. Adults would have come here ready to have a conversation rather than deliver a lecture. Adults would have remembered that they were invited here as a guest, not as a judge and jury. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Meghan's face flushed with anger, and for a moment, it seemed like she might actually strike him. Instead, she did something even more shocking. You know what, she said, her voice suddenly cold and calculated. I don't have to sit here and be attacked by a man who's never faced a real challenge in his entire life. A man who's built his career on keeping powerful people comfortable and marginalized people silent. I don't have to pretend that this conversation has any value when it's just another example of how the media protects itself. She turned toward the audience, her voice rising again. This is what happens when you try to speak truth to power people. This is how they silence you. They invite you on, they pretend to be friendly, and then they attack you the moment you refuse to play their game. Norton had reached his breaking point. Years of professionalism, years of making difficult guests feel welcome, years of biting his tongue in the face of unreasonable behavior all came to an end in that moment. That's enough, he said, standing up to face her. You need to leave. The words hit the studio like a thunderclap. Norton had never, in all his years of hosting, asked a guest to leave his show. The audience sat in stunned silence, unsure if they were witnessing television history or television disaster. Cameras continued to roll, capturing every second of what would become one of the most talked about moments in talk show history. Meghan's face went through a series of expressions in rapid succession. First shock, then rage, then something that looked almost like satisfaction, as if Norton's reaction had proven whatever point she had been trying to make. Excuse me, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Did you just tell me to leave? Yes, I did, Norton replied, his voice steady but firm. This interview is over. You've been rude to me, you've been rude to my other guests, and you've been rude to my audience. I won't have it on my show. The audience began to murmur, a low buzz of confusion and excitement rippling through the studio. This was unprecedented territory for the usually lighthearted program. The comedian and author sat frozen in their seats, clearly unsure whether they should intervene or simply try to become invisible. You're kicking me off your show? Meghan's voice was rising again. You're literally proving my point about how the establishment silences women who speak truth. This is exactly what I was talking about. No, Norton said, his Irish accent becoming more pronounced as his emotions ran higher. I'm kicking you off my show because you came here with an agenda to attack everyone in this room. You didn't come here for a conversation. You came here for a confrontation, and I won't be part of it anymore. Meghan took a step closer to Norton, her finger pointing accusingly at his chest. You invited me here under false pretenses. You pretended this would be a respectful interview, but the moment I started speaking about real issues, you tried to shut me down. I tried to have a normal conversation with you, Norton shot back. I asked you simple questions about your life and your work. You're the one who turned this into an attack on everyone in the room. You're the one who decided that anyone who doesn't agree with you is part of some conspiracy. The tension was so thick that crew members were starting to edge closer, clearly preparing for the possibility that security might need to be called. The other guests looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. This was far beyond anything they had signed up for when they agreed to appear on the show. A normal conversation? Meghan laughed bitterly. There's nothing normal about sitting here pretending that entertainment is more important than justice. There's nothing normal about using your platform to distract people from the real issues facing our world. And there's nothing normal about a privileged white man telling a woman of color that she's being too aggressive. Norton's eyes flashed with anger. Don't you dare make this about race or gender. This is about basic human decency and respect. I've had guests of every background on this show, and I've treated them all with the same courtesy that I tried to show you. The difference is that they came here as guests, not as prosecutors. Prosecutors! Meghan's voice reached a shriek. I'm holding you accountable for your choices, and you call me a prosecutor? This is exactly the kind of language that's used to silence women who refuse to stay in their lane. Your lane? Norton was incredulous now. You think I'm trying to keep you in some lane? You came on my show voluntarily. Nobody forced you to be here. But if you're going to be here, you're going to show some basic respect for the other people in the room. The audience was now openly staring, some with their mouths hanging open. This was unlike anything they had ever seen on the Graham Norton show. The program was known for its warmth, its humor, its ability to make celebrities seem relatable and friendly. This was the complete opposite of everything the show represented. Respect? Meghan's voice was now loud enough that it was probably audible to people outside the studio. You want me to respect a system that perpetuates inequality? You want me to respect people who use their privilege to maintain the status quo? You want me to respect a show that values entertainment over education? I want you to respect the people who invited you here, Norton said, his voice now matching hers in volume. I want you to respect the audience who came here to have a good time. I want you to respect the other guests who are just trying to promote their work, but apparently, that's too much to ask. Meghan turned to face the audience directly, gesturing wildly as she spoke. This is what happens when you challenge power people. This is how they react when you refuse to play their game. They invite you in, they pretend to be your friend, and then they show you the door the moment you speak truth. Norton had heard enough. He walked over to where the production team was standing and spoke quietly to his producer. The conversation was brief but intense, and when Norton returned to his position, his face was set with determination. Security will escort you out, he said simply. This interview is over, and you need to leave now. The words hit Meghan like a physical blow. For the first time since the conversation had started, she seemed genuinely shocked. Her mouth opened and closed several times before any words came out. You're having me removed by security, she finally managed. Like I'm some kind of criminal? Like I'm a threat? You're a threat to the well-being of everyone in this room, Norton replied without hesitation. You've created a hostile environment for my staff, my guests, and my audience. I have a responsibility to protect them from that. 2 security guards appeared from the wings, moving slowly and professionally toward the seating area. They weren't aggressive or threatening, but their presence made it clear that this situation was now beyond the point of no return. Meghan looked around the studio one last time, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and something that might have been hurt. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone who believed they were making their final statement. This is exactly why I left the royal family, she said, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. This is exactly why I had to protect my children from institutions that claim to care about people, but only care about protecting themselves. You've just proven everything I've been saying about how this system works. And with that, she walked toward the exit, the security guards flanking her but not touching her. The studio remained dead silent until the sound of the exit door closing echoed through the space. Norton stood alone on the stage, looking out at an audience that seemed unsure whether to applaud or simply sit in stunned silence. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke. Well, he said, his voice carrying just a hint of his usual humor, I think we'll just move on to our next guest. The audience erupted,